What's up? Welcome in. It is Tuesday, the 9th day of December in the year 2025. That is only 22 days away from being gonzo. Adios, sayonara. Bring us into 2026 where we will have college football problems still in 2026. I'm not going to fool anybody here, but we got plenty of stuff to talk about. What a weekend it was. The baseball winter meetings are going on. The Pittsburgh Pirates, it was nice to have hope. Same thing with Cincinnati, but you lost on the big fish. We'll get to that here in a little bit. As you know, at this time of year, I am on a baseball moratorium, but we finally got news that warrants us talking about baseball. So we're going to drop a little baseball in there, a little college basketball crystal ball, if you will. If you remember correctly, I know you do, Mack, because I wouldn't shut up talking about them last year. At this time last year, I told both you and TJ, I said, I don't know what it is. This Florida team's got something going on. Why is that? Well, every year for the last 21 years, 100% of the time, since 2004, your national champion in college basketball has come from the top 12 of the Week 6 AP poll, which is here we are. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Feel free to follow along if you're watching along. Drop your comments in there. We'll get as many of them up on the screen as we possibly can. We're going to do this in a little different approach. Mack and I had a conversation yesterday, and all we've heard for the last 72 hours is people whining and bitching and complaining about the college football playoff, who's there, who's not there. So we're going to take a different approach tonight. We're going to be the beacons of light and positivity that we always are on this program. And we're going to talk about the teams that actually made it to the college football playoff. Tomorrow, we'll talk about how we can fix it and the elephant in the room, the leprechaun that's not in the room. You get where I'm going with that. But Vegas Mack, respect the whale. What is going on, my brother, on this Tuesday?
Oh gosh almighty. There's just there's a lot going on. We got some good basketball tonight. Waiting for our big matchup, UConn and Florida. That one's a little delayed, and we had just some. Yeah, what was going on in that Monday night football game last night?
I don't
Some
know,
of
man.
some of the most bizarre plays that I think I've ever seen in a football game. And Jalen Hurts, is he okay? I mean, I don't know. I can't even think of a quarterback that can fill in for him. Ron Jaworski, can Jaworski come back and play? I mean, since we're going back old school quarterbacks,
I
let's
mean,
figure out what we can do.
yeah, my phone didn't ring from an Indianapolis area code. I was a little disappointed for that, but we'll talk about Grandpa being back in the NFL for the Colts and what can go on. What's up, Adam? Checking in early on this Tuesday night. We're always a couple of short of a lot of things, Adam, but Wednesdays and Thursdays are TJ's day on the program at this time of the year. So appreciate you checking in. Again, feel free to comment along if you're watching along, and make sure you follow us on all of our social channels at Mike Arana Show everywhere but Snapchat, because as TJ would so eloquently put if he was here, we're not 12 and Snapchat sucks. We had a lot of stuff this weekend, including weather games and fumbles and drops and a quarterback who threw an
It's no
interception
joke.
and a fumble on the same damn play, kind of what Mack was alluding to there. But let's check the headlines in the sports world, because there's a lot of stuff going on as we finish out this calendar year. We've got hockey in action tonight. We've got NBA Cup elimination games, and the Miami Heat are 1.3 seconds away from being eliminated. Thank you, Magic, on the money line. I loved that one tonight. There's a lot going on, and we can decipher through this wherever we want to, but let's start with baseball, because we caught a couple of newsworthy items today. Kyle Schwarber back to the Philadelphia Phillies, 5-year, $150 million deal for a guy that literally hits home runs, draws walks, and strikes out. You know what? You got to know what you're good at, and Kyle Schwarber is arguably the best at what he does. I'm happy to see him stay in Philly, because I think, Mac, and we've talked about this a bunch of times, the Philly situation, we know it needs to be kind of stripped down from the inside, and I'm very interested to watch the Phillies as this offseason progresses, because I think there is going to be a lot of changes. One of the things that didn't need to change was Kyle Schwarber was not one of the guys that needed to go off of that team. I could come up with a list about 4 or 5 Phillies that I think Philly fans would love to see go as well. Happy for Schwarber. I think he belongs in Philadelphia. He's an icon there. He's not part of the problem in Philly, and he gets rightfully paid today.
Absolutely, good move for them. It's a good fit. It would have been a good fit in a couple of places, but that was definitely a good fit. It's a good start for Philadelphia. It'll be interesting to see, like you said, how they progress from here. Um, I think they want to get a little bit younger than what they are, and some of their young bats, I think that they're not real happy with. We'll see if they get moved. They still have a hole in the outfield. They may even have two holes in the outfield. They have some work to do. They're not the Philly team that we thought they were in
Mhm.
July.
No, and that's the thing is that's always our benchmark, and it's kind of funny because when you look at it and you look at the guys on this team, and I haven't shied away from this, and I won't shy away from this. Nick Castellanos has to go. They've got
Mhm.
young prospects in their system and that can play the outfield positions. I think the Phillies outfield was arguably one of the worst outfields
Mhm.
collectively that I've seen in a while of contending teams. We also know the Phillies need to they have some decisions to make when it comes to their arms with Nola and Wheeler and some of these guys and Ranger Suarez and we can go up and down the list here. Kyle Schwarber, I think, is the guy that really keeps that clubhouse together there. I know, like you said, there was a lot of teams. Cincinnati, he grew up very, very close to the ballpark in Cincinnati. They weren't able to come to the table with enough money in a classic Reds move. A bat, and I talked about this, Mac, and I still think there's a play here, but how they handled the Schwarber thing makes me say that they're not very serious about it. I mentioned it when the baseball season was coming to a close, and we saw guys that were going to opt out, and we've heard all kinds of things about what's going on within the Mets clubhouse. Pete Alonso, I think, is a masterful fit for the Cincinnati Reds. A veteran bat that is not just a home run hitter, a veteran presence, some protection for Ellie De La Cruz. But here we are, and we're talking about the same damn thing. And I know it's early in the process. The winter meetings have just gotten kind of going. These are the first moves that we've made, or we've seen big moves made today. But we're seeing it again. Here's the Reds, and they don't come to the table with enough firepower in dollars and cents to get a guy like Schwarber. Makes me think that they're not going to have anywhere near the firepower to get a guy like Pete Alonso. And here we are talking about the same teams that could be right there. And the Reds were right there. They made the postseason. But you could see in that postseason series, it's Ellie De La Cruz or the Reds are not a factor. They need protection. And here they are again, failing to come up with the proper financial terms for a bat that would have helped them.
Yeah, the Reds are a funny situation to me. I mean, I feel like they're there, and then I feel like they're not really there. I still think, and I'm trying to think, like put myself if I could imagine that, put myself in the shoes of Kyle Schwarber or Pete Alonso. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's one of those things. Like I look at them and I still don't feel. I know their pitching is going to be good, and I think if they decide to keep Green, that rotation really kind of fills out well. So they have good starting pitching. I still think there are a couple of guys short, and if I'm Pete Alonso, if I'm Kyle Schwarber, is that a place where let's be honest, these guys have to be thinking to themselves in the next year, next season or two, can we win a World Series? And I don't know that I would answer yes to the Cincinnati Reds quite yet. I don't quite think they're there, as opposed to some of the other teams that are courting these guys.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a very fair way to put it, and here we are on the flip side, the opposite of the Cincinnati Reds, where the Dodgers have now set another record for amount of money spent
Yeah.
in an offseason, and we're just now starting the deal today. Edwin Diaz will be taking Timmy Trumpet to La La Land to close for the Dodgers. Big shock there. 3-year deal, $69 million, which is the largest annual value record for a relief pitcher. When the Devin Williams move was made to the Mets, I think the writing was on the wall, and we knew and we heard that Diaz was likely not to come back. The Dodgers overpaid, and they did what they do, and now they've got another all-star caliber arm in their bullpen, and I'm sure it'll be the first of a dozen guys, pitchers, that they sign in this offseason. while we wait for everything to kind of shake its way out. The interesting thing is now is when we're starting to hear, all the talk about Tarek Skubal and why he hasn't signed an extension with the Tigers, and now he's a part of trade talk. The first thing that pops up into everybody's head, oh, great, here's another guy that's going to be a Dodger. But we're seeing some names, and we're hearing some names come out early in this process here. And we're talking about, we're not talking about just average kind of dudes here. Freddie Peralta, best fit, likely your Red Sox. There's another name, Hunter Green. Is Cincinnati going to trade him and move on with him from him? They have a lot of young arms in Cincinnati as well. We know that's not the greatest ballpark to pitch in, but we're starting to see these names come out. And apparently AJ Preller, my favorite general manager to talk about, we've talked about the Padres situation. Allegedly today, they're in the process of making a monumental move that'll make what Preller's done at the deadline, and if I can remember the quote exactly right, it will look nothing like anything that he's done before. So we're hearing of this massive move, and I think a lot of people are going, oh, who the Padres going to get? We know this. We've talked about this on this show several times. I think you're not looking at this from the right lens. It's who are the Padres going to move on from, I think, is where the big trade kind of fits the situation. And I think that Nick Pivetta is a guy that we should keep our eye on to see if he ends up staying in San Diego or maybe makes his home next year at Wrigley Field. Nick Pivetta is an interesting arm in the grand scheme of these things. Obviously, Tarek Skubal's the biggest chip here, but I know you know Nick Pivetta very well, and I think there's a lot of teams that would massively benefit from Nick Pivetta.
Yeah, Nick Pivetta. The other name, and I find it interesting that's being tossed around a little bit, and I've seen it from time to time, and it's one of those things when you see it from time to time, you begin to wonder about it, and that's Fernando Tatis Jr. His name keeps popping up as a potentially somebody who could get traded. So when I think of the Padres, and I think they're going to make some sort of move. I think that I think unfortunately this makes me sad, but I think there's one guy they're trying to get out from underneath, and that's Xander Bogaerts. That went south really quick. I mean, I love Xander. I mean, he was so great for the Red Sox, and I mean, I don't think that he's done, but something happened to him in that transition to San Diego. So yeah, kind of interesting. But I keep seeing Tatis's name pop up here and there, and so makes me wonder if he might not be one.
Another guy I'm interested, obviously that would be earth-shattering, that kind of move. We know they're not going to get out from Manny Machado's contract. Guy to keep an eye on, A, because I like saying his name, and B, he had a fantastic year last year, and he's entering a walk year on his contract. And I think he's a guy that's not going to get the headlines, but he's going to fly under the radar, and I think he could be a really good 3-4 kind of fit for the right team. That's Chris Bubich of the Royals. He's a guy I could see, and David Schoenfeld from ESPN actually echoed this as well. That's a guy I could see the Phillies targeting. I mean, he had a 2.55 ERA in his 20 starts, and he's going into that walk year, and we know the Royals situation is very similar to Cincinnati's situation in how they handle things that they're doing here, and I could see them probably trying to make a move here if he doesn't fit their long-term plans, which you would question that because he had a really good year for the Royals. Reagans and Bubich were the only reason the Royals had a shot down the stretch. I think he's an interesting name to kind of keep an eye on here as we progress forward over the next week to 10 days or so.
Yeah, there's enough teams that need starters. There's going to be a major starter moved. I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's Green. I don't know if it's one of those two that you mentioned from the Royals. I don't know if it's Skubal or somebody from the Brewers like a Peralta. But I will be surprised if a big name pitcher doesn't get moved. There's just been too much talk about it, and I say too much talk. I mean, here I'll be honest with you. I mean, the Boston Red Sox have a lot to offer a lot of people. The Boston Red Sox have surplus. They have surplus in young arms. They have a surplus in the outfield. They have surplus money. I think their money is going to be spent on bats. I think they're going to get another pitcher. I don't think Sonny Gray was who they were talking about as their number two. I think they're going to get somebody. And I think it's a mixture of somebody that you mentioned, that we just mentioned in that group.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because and we know this from the winter meetings. When you get those first two big deals, and we're talking the big deals like Schwarber and Edwin Diaz's deal today, that's usually where everything starts to kind of follow through. Other than baseball, note, last one that we're going to pass along for today at least, the White Sox have won something, Mac. They won the 2026 MLB draft order, and they will pick first in the upcoming draft, whether that leads them to UCLA shortstop Rock Cholowski or not. I have no idea. I probably butchered his name. I've seen him play. Can't pronounce his name. But the White Sox get the top pick. Tampa Bay 2, Minnesota 3, San Francisco 4, and Pittsburgh 5. The Royals, who we were just talking about, they come in 6. The Royals were slated for the 13th pick. They actually jumped up to number 6. The Giants were slated for the 12th pick. They jumped all the way from 12th to 4th. So it's kind of interesting here to see some of these names on there. Obviously, the baseball draft doesn't get the attention of the NBA draft or the NFL draft, but it's interesting to see some of those teams constantly at the top of that list who can never get out of their own friggin' way right now. All right, other stuff going on in the sports world. Well, there's been a few different pieces of college football news, and we'll get to those here in just a second. But Phillip Rivers is back in the NFL. The Indianapolis Colts lost Daniel Jones to an Achilles injury while he was already playing with a broken friggin' leg. Riley Leonard's got a knee strain issue. Who knows what's going on with Anthony Richardson and slingshots. And they decided it was time to pull Phillip Rivers off the couch. I've got something for you that'll make you crack up laughing here. Next week, Monday Night Football, a week from Monday, Niners in Indy to take on the Colts. It'll be Brock Purdy against Phillip Rivers. Brock Purdy was born late in the 1999 year. Phillip Rivers was drafted into the NFL in 2004. I respect the Colts for doing what they have to do in this situation, holding on to dear hope as they slide out of a playoff picture. They also have games with Seattle, San Francisco, Jacksonville, and Houston still. I mean, they're in a world of hurt here. To put it in even more perspective, this is from Adam Schefter. Colts 44-year-old quarterback Phillip Rivers is older than his head coach Shane Steichen, who's 40, and his OC, another one of my favorite names, Jim Bob Cooter, who's 41. His new center, Tanner Bortolini, fine Italian fellow right there, was 1 year and 10 months old when Phillip Rivers was drafted into the NFL. I respect the Colts for doing what they had to do of names that were available to get. This is the best one. If it's enough to save their season, great. I don't know.
There's not another quarter. I mean, that just seems really weird to me. That there's something that came down. I mean, when he went down, and I heard about the other injuries. The first I was trying to think. I'm like, okay, they're going to need a quarterback. I was trying to think of somebody who like retired recently, and the first thing that came to mind was Derek Carr. I mean, I don't know if he was, even interested, but you got to think there's got to be a better solution. That can't be the solution. I mean, I don't know.
Should have tried to make a trade with the Vikings to get Josh McCown off their coaching staff to play the rest of the season for him. That would have been unprecedented shit right there.
Yeah, that I feel bad. Indianapolis had such a good first half of the year, and then just I'm going to be honest. I don't know that they recover from this, figuratively and just realistically. I don't think you recover. I mean, but then again, they're in the AFC, and anything can happen if you're in the AFC because the AFC right now is pretty darn weak.
Yeah, you can definitely make that assessment when we look at the standings for sure. College basketball, final thing before we get into college football here. We got some good games going on right now. Illinois, Ohio State, 58-55 in about the halfway point through the second half. BYU and Clemson, that game's been a freaking riot. BYU has now taken back the lead at 62-59. They were getting blasted in the first half, Mac. They were down 43-22. They've outscored Clemson 40-16 in the second half of that game. Why is that pertinent? Well, it's week 6 of the AP poll. And as I said, every year since 2004, the national champion has come from the top 12 of the AP poll in week 6. So your contenders, as far as following the stat down this rabbit hole, Arizona, Purdue, UConn, Louisville, Michigan, Michigan State, Iowa State, Duke, Alabama, BYU, Gonzaga, and Houston. That is your current top 12 in college basketball. So, Vegas Mac, I ask you a question. If you're following the trend, knowing those are the combatants down this rabbit hole that we're going, which one of those 12 teams right now, if you had to make a bet on them, $100 of my money, our favorite game to play on this show, which one gets your $100 bet right now if you had to pick a national champ out of those 12?
Well, I mean, for the sake of argument, I would pick UConn, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going in a different direction. I'm going with Michigan State. I really like the way this team has played. It makes my son happy as well. They've had some really good wins. Even their loss against Duke was by 6. I really like, when we think of Michigan State, we think of a team that can rebound better than anybody, but they just can't shoot even in in an empty gym. And I like them from an offensive standpoint. They seem a lot more fluid this year, a lot better shooting this year than they have in the past. And so when you have a Michigan State team that can rebound better than anybody in the country, because that's just what they preach at Michigan State, and they're going to play good defense. If they can shoot the ball and play offense the way they have been, that to me is a pretty darn good basketball team.
Yeah, and when we know it's the Izzo magic every year too. I mean, you can give him a bunch of 3-stars up and down his roster, and he'll turn them into one of the better teams in the country. I am going to stay in the state of Michigan if I had to make a pick right now, but I am going to very reluctantly go with Dusty May's Michigan Wolverines. 9-0, they blasted Villanova tonight, and that's a good Villanova team too. Let's put this in perspective here. We talked about this a few weeks ago. Kevin Willard taking that situation over in Villanova, and there's a lot to rebuild. He's basically got an entirely new roster, and they're out of the gates 7-2, but they ran into the Michigan buzzsaw today. 89-61, the Wolverines dropped the Wildcats to move to 9-0. Their next game at Maryland coming up, but I really, really like this group that Michigan has this year. They've got a pretty solid balance between their veteran players as well as some of their young new recruits that are in. They're getting contributions all over the board. They've got 4 guys in double figures. Ade Mara just under that at 9.4. I think this team has got, at least so far in the 9 games start to the season, I think this team's really got the balance, the guard play, and the defensive mindset that we know. Those are the 3 things in the tournament. Can you play defense? Do you have elite guard play? Can you knock down free throws? This team can do a little bit of everything, and I really, really like this group that he has. As far as your pick and my pick, it'll be really interesting with the Big Ten conference schedule getting ready to start soon. But we won't see Michigan and Michigan State play until the end of January, so we're still a ways away from that. They play end of January, and they play the last game of the season March 8th, Michigan and Michigan State to do 2 teams that I think we're absolutely going to see in March, which, if you think about it, Mac, it sounds like we're a long way away, but once we get through the college football playoffs and the Super Bowl and everything, like, we're knocking on that doorstep, and it's not that far down the road.
No, it was kind of funny as I was going through my feed today. I must have come up at least 2 or 3 times different brackets already being, who are the first 4 in, who are the first 4 out already. They're talking about the UConn Florida game. If UConn wins tonight, they could surpass Iowa State as one of the number 1 seeds. It does seem so early. It's kind of like, in my mind, I don't think college basketball really starts until we get to the conference games. Once the conference games start, then you kind of picks up some momentum. These early season games are great. They still feel like preseason games to me, even though they're not. But once the conference gets going, then things really get hot.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots to keep an eye on there. Again, conference play just around the corner. We've got the aforementioned Florida and UConn game coming up here in just a little bit. BYU and Clemson are knotted at 64, which means they're likely headed to overtime, which is not where you want to have an under bet. we'll move on from that. Let's talk about college football, and obviously a lot going on in that space right now. And this was the best thing I saw all weekend when Alabama was getting smacked in the SEC championship game by Georgia. And that's that's what everybody thinks, that Lane's ultimate dream job scenario would be to go to Bama, even though allegedly Bama said that they probably wouldn't hire him back. But just got a good chuckle out of that this weekend. Mack, we have arrived at the time of the year that was once glorious, and I don't know if it still is. There is your Coca-Cola Bowl season, 2025-2026 bowl schedule. And say what you want, there's still some of us that like watching the bowl games. It sucks watching them knowing that until kickoff, we're really not going to know in most of these who's actually playing. The bowl games actually will get started with the Cricket Celebration Bowl on Saturday. That's South Carolina State and Prairie View and A&M from Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. The bucked with a B, not what you think I said, the bucked up LA Bowl, Boise State and Washington from SoFi Stadium. Again, those are both games this Saturday. So see, you actually can finish your college football regular season and then play a bowl game in a moderately timely fashion. Who knew? Like, what a concept there. But the talk of the world is the college football playoff. And like I said, we're going to focus tonight a little bit more on who's actually playing. Tomorrow, when it's all three of us, we'll have some differentiating opinions, I'm sure. I'm sure of it. I'm sure TJ will have a lot of funny thoughts on Phillip Rivers tomorrow as well. But let's talk about the 12 that got there. 12-5, your first round matchup, James Madison and Oregon. 9-8 is Alabama, Oklahoma. Tulane and Ole Miss. That's a rematch. That's your 11-6 matchup. And then the 10-7 matchup is the one that got all the eyeballs because Miami is in at 10, and they'll take on Texas A&M, Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas Tech, your 1 through 4 buys in that order. Now we have a bracket in front of us, Mac. Mm-hmm. What gets you going as we now know the participants in the field? And what did you learn this weekend? Did one of the teams that qualified teach you something this weekend about them that you did not know or you were impressed with or not impressed with in seeing them play on conference championship weekend?
I will tell you, I still had some skepticism about Indiana, and I'm not quite sure why. I really thought Ohio State was going to win that game. Listen, I think we have to tip our hat to Indiana. I mean, I think they, as I've looked over the last couple of days, kind of as on the whole season as a whole, I think the body of work that Indiana's done is really good. I mean, and people say, well, they didn't play everybody in the conference. We know that. But that one big game that they had at Oregon, they handled that one fairly easily. Yeah, you're going to have some close calls in the season. It happens in every sport. We know that. But they handled them just perfectly. And then in a neutral site, took care of an Ohio State team that I thought was playing really, really good football. I think this Indiana, what I'm bummed about when I look at this bracket is that Indiana has to play Texas Tech in a semifinal game if they got to that. For me, I wish that would be the national championship game. I think, to me, I think those are the two of the best teams. I didn't watch Indiana in person, but I saw Texas Tech. I really like those teams. I've kind of been on a little bit of a Texas Tech bender this year. I've liked them from the start. I like what they did. We talked about the NIL and stuff that they did in the portal. I just like those two teams. I wish that would have been a championship game instead of a semifinal game. So that's what really stands out to me. As far as the first round goes, I would have to lean towards the Miami Texas A&M just because we haven't seen it. We saw the Alabama Oklahoma game a couple weeks ago, so we kind of have a little bit of a preview on that. And in fact, two of those 4 games are kind of repeats. So that's a little bit of a bummer. I guess if it was me, I would have. If you could have moved them around a little bit just to get some new games in there, just to see. But it is what it is. We don't want to create any more controversy than we already have.
Yeah, and it'll get started on December 19th, so a week from Friday, under the lights in Norman, as Alabama travels there to take on the Sooners again, as Mac mentioned. We all know that's a rematch from just a few weeks ago. Alabama's actually currently a 1.5-point favorite on the road in that game. Mississippi favored by 17.5 over Tulane. Texas A&M 3.5 over Miami. And Oregon 21.5 over James Madison. Kind of interesting because we know there's a doubleheader of NFL football games on the 20th, and to see the placing of the times of some of these games and going up against the NFL on that particular day is interesting. And I think it's kind of interesting when you look at the way the schedule worked itself out. We would have probably all assumed that Tulane and Ole Miss might have been the opener, but I think in conveniently trying to schedule with that doubleheader in the NFL on that Saturday on the 20th, they put Texas A&M and Miami as the early game on Saturday morning that doesn't go head up with any of the NFL games. You've got Tulane and Ole Miss and James Madison and Oregon that'll go up head on those two games. I think the team that I learned the most about this weekend or was just really kind of taken back by their performance in a positive way is a team I think a lot of us have slept on for most of the year. And it sounds crazy to say that with these guys, but I think Georgia showed me their ability to dial it up, pun intended, to left lane hammer down, if you will, when the chips are all on the table. And they came into that SEC title game against Bama knowing they were already in, no big deal. They heard enough about Bama being their kryptonite, and they played like a team that had heard enough of Bama being their kryptonite. I think Georgia, Mack, and I really like the way the bracket shaped out. We're going to actually make our official picks for who we think's taking the whole thing on tomorrow's program. But I think Georgia is the team that I watched this past weekend, and I was like, damn, man, we haven't talked about Georgia, I don't think, nearly enough on a national level this year, and we weren't sure what we were going to get out of Gunnar Stockton, and we saw them so many times asleep at the wheel and playing with their food in the first half of games, and they looked like every bit as good as these past couple of Georgia teams that have been right in the mix for a championship. I think Kirby's got another one this year again.
You know, you just wonder, and I'll say the same kind of like with Alabama or even Ohio State. You wonder about some of these teams that, you know, year after year are kind of getting into this field and kind of playing. Again, not that they discount or don't care about their conference championship, but it's kind of like you wonder, how much do they just have one eye on? Hey, listen, we just need to get into the field, you know, of 12, and once we're there, or we know we're there, then we're going to kind of turn it up a little bit, because that's what it seemed like to Georgia for me. Like they just kind of knew, like, hey, listen, we win this game, we're going to get a bye, and if we get a bye, we're probably going to. We know one of the two top teams are going to lose. We could probably maybe even sneak into a number 2 spot, and they really did turn it on. I mean, like you said, the one thing about Georgia, it's like we kind of joked about. They don't show up till the second half. Well, that definitely wasn't the case. They were a 4-quarter team on Saturday.
Yeah, they absolutely were. And again, that was for me my biggest eye opener of the weekend was just seeing just a complete football game played by the Dogs this weekend. If you're wondering, the NFL games on that doubleheader that are going head up, the Ole Miss Tulane game will start about an hour and a half before the first game of the NFL doubleheader that day, which is Eagles at Commanders. The James Madison Oregon game starts at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock on the West Coast, 7 o'clock on the East Coast. Well, why is that? Well, an hour and 20 minutes later is when Packers Bears Part 2 kicks off from Chicago. So, needless to say, I think, as much as I don't want to give credit here because I think the whole thing's been a shit show, but the committee did a very wise thing by scheduling the way they did, because you're not going to pull people off of Packers Bears. No. Not because that's likely for the North that week. So we'll keep an eye on that. But, you know, obviously a lot of the talk, Mac, is the format, this, that, and the other thing. And again, we'll get more into the details on this tomorrow. But if you were to seed this field 1-16, that is what it looks like right there. So you don't see a whole lot different. You'll notice Texas A&M, Miami, that would still be the same game, 10-7, Oklahoma, Alabama, still be the same thing here. I think where you get, and this is where the 16-team playoff drum bangers sit, and it's hard to argue with this if you look at that, because you look at some of the new matchups that we have in there. Ole Miss, Notre Dame, I think would be fascinating. Vandy and Georgia. A lot of people wanted to see Vandy there. Texas Tech, and Texas, Oregon and
Right.
BYU. I mean,
Right.
there's nothing wrong with that. That's just not where we're at right now. And obviously the format is going to continue to be a thing, but it's, you know, I think we're quick to criticize, and rightfully so, the way that the process has been handled. I think you and I would both agree with what the major sentiment was, and it really kind of started coming out this past weekend, was that the Tuesday show, while it was intended to drum up excitement for this new thing, and I think the first couple rankings typically do, it also shows very much how flawed the entire process is. Case in point, the Alabama Notre Dame shifting of positions and the cushion that the committee gave Alabama, that if they looked as shitty as they did on Saturday, they were still going to be fine. I think the easy break here, without going too far down this rabbit hole, I think the easy break here, show consistency in your conference championship outcomes. Therefore, BYU and Alabama should have missed. If that was the angle that we're going for, Notre Dame and Miami could have both been in. Clean break, wasn't going to be a whole lot to bitch about in that scenario. Obviously, Notre Dame has made things worse over the last couple of days by doing what they've done. But I want to give credit, because if we remember this last year with the way it formatted last year, Tulane would be getting a bye in the first round of this year's playoff. They would be the fourth seed. They would get a bye to be a sacrificial lamb at that point for likely Ohio State in the second round. If it went by last year's format, Ohio State would have fallen 5-12. I think the Tuesday show is the first thing we got to get the F rid of right now. Stop ranking teams until like week 4 and get rid of the Tuesday show. And I think we walk into a way more positive direction, because as we know, in this sports space, college football is the most anger-filled vitriol space on X, if you will, for everybody critiquing everybody and cutting this team down to make yourself look good. And this conference created this social media campaign that made us look bad. Like, Jesus, stop ranking teams in the preseason, because here's a perfect example. Look at this bowl game, and we're going to talk about bowl games here in a second. This is your preseason number 2 and your preseason number 4. Playing at Yankee Stadium before the New Year.
Yeah.
Preseason 2 and 4 in the Pinstripe Bowl. I don't think I need to say anything else there.
No. I think for me, it sounds silly, but they need to put it down on paper. They need to say, this is going to be our criteria. And if they have to look at the Division 1A or the Division 2 process, I mean, they have a certain criteria that they use to determine their bracket. I mean, why can't you come out and say our first criteria is going to be if they played head to head? Okay, just put it on there. I mean, you may not use it every year, but if that was your number one criteria, let's just be honest. If we're deciding between two teams and they've played, let's look at that, and that eliminates this whole process of what we've had over the last couple of weeks. If you look at that, the Notre Dame and Miami, you don't have to answer any questions. You just say, look at our criteria. Here's what happened. Here's what happened when they played head to head. Boom, it's done and over with. So going into those games that, hey, these are games that we have to win. And I just think that would be more purposeful if they could just say, this is what our criteria is. Don't tell us, write it down, put it down, say these are the things. It's going to be A, B, C, and D, and I think that would clear things up a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the right way to go with it. And again, we'll talk more about our fixes for it tomorrow. I wanted to make sure that we gave everybody watching, and we appreciate all you out there watching, those of you that are checking in. Tag your friends, tell your friends, follow us on all of our social channels. Make sure that you double check that like and subscribe button, that you're actually subscribed, because you'd be surprised. Sometimes you're actually not. Tomorrow we're going to dive into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts and talk about who's not there and make a last-ditch case for no reason for who we would have like to have seen get that one final spot. A couple other things to pass along in the college football world. Virginia Tech is expected to hire Penn State co-offensive coordinator and tight ends coach Ty Howell as their new offensive coordinator. As we know, Virginia Tech made a little bit of interesting news in bringing back former head coach Brent Pry to once again be the defensive coordinator for the Hokies for James Franklin. So Franklin's starting to put his staff together there. I think that's a good get for them. Your first thought would be, hey, Penn State's offense looked like anemic at times here. He was the co-offensive coordinator. And let me just rattle off a list of a couple of guys that Ty Howell has worked with and turned into pretty solid pros. That would be Pat Fryermuth of Mack's Pittsburgh Steelers, Brenton Strange of the Jaguars, Theo Johnson of the Giants, and Tyler Warren of the Colts, all mentored as tight ends under Ty Howell. So as we start to see some of these staffs get put together here, more news from the Ole Miss LSU drama as 4 LSU coaches will now rejoin Ole Miss to help them on their college football playoff run. I know we're not doing liquid locks today, but I will tell you now, because you'll hear it from me first, Tulane is beating Ole Miss in that game. I don't care how many coaches are coming back. That Tulane team is a pretty damn good team. A lot of people are going to point to the earlier matchup when I believe it was 45-10. I'm really digging John Summerall and what he's putting together. And obviously, Ole Miss, I think, Mac, is kind of a wild card. And that's why I'm interested to see tomorrow what we all end up picking for our final 4 teams in our title game and our winner here. Because we can get an Ole Miss team that comes out and completely just takes a dump down their legs because of all the chaos that's gone on now that this thing has officially happened. Or we get an Ole Miss team that says, F you, Lane Kiffin, and we're going to play and finish the job that you should have stayed here to finish that allegedly he wanted to, but it depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, I kind of lean towards. I think Ole Miss is going to come out with a huge chip on their shoulder. I think those kids just feel. I mean, I'm obviously not there, but I would feel very betrayed, and it's kind of like you said, kind of that point, like. Yeah, you may have been the head coach, but you know what? We went out there and we're the ones who did it, and we're going to show you how darn good, uh, how darn good we are. So, how I mean, how poetic would it be if Ole Miss won the whole darn thing? I mean, I mean, I will root for them. I will root for them until they lose, just for that, because I think that would be just kind of a, talk about the ultimate, middle finger. There you go.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, and again, that's why we wanted to approach this a little bit differently than what everybody's doing, because everybody just wanted the shock reaction first thing
Right.
Monday morning. We're going to talk about the teams that are in like we have tonight. Tomorrow we'll get into the nuts and bolts a little bit more of it. We've also got a Heisman Trophy presentation that's coming up here very quickly, and we know our finalists now. Finally, Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback of the Indiana Hoosiers, Julian Sayin, the quarterback of Ohio State, Diego Pavia, the quarterback of Vanderbilt, who is not in the college football playoff. A lot of people would have liked to have seen them be there. And Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame, who is also not in the college football playoff. And unfortunately, none of us are going to get to see him run a ball again for Notre Dame, which is kind of the shitty thing about the whole situation. But Saturday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock on the West Coast, kind of in the same time range as John Cena's final match on Saturday night's main event. I know who I want to see win the Heisman because I think he's earned it. Body of work, especially compared to these other finalists. I think all 4 finalists are very worthy. I want to see Jeremiah Love win it. I think what he's done, and I don't think, and it sucks because we won't see him again for them. We might not see Marcus Freeman coach another game for Notre Dame if you're reading the tea leaves right. But give me your pick. I'd like to see Jeremiah Love win it. I think Diego Pavia is actually going to win this thing.
Interesting. It's kind of interesting. This is like the first year. Like normally, you kind of have a real good feel about who's going to win this.
That's right.
Yeah. Um, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I think it's going to be Julian Sayin. I think he's going to be the winner.
Interesting.
I just, yeah, I just think he's, I don't know. They're all kind of even. His numbers are probably, I think, a little bit better than the rest. I think that's why he gets it.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm on the Pavia thing, because I said it on the show like a month ago when he looked at his passing totals in some of their games when he started to get this Heisman buzz. I was like, those are not Heisman numbers. You look at what he did from basically, it was like he was watching the show. Thank you, Diego. We appreciate you. Anchor down, baby. But like from that point forward, he almost literally willed them into the college football playoff. And again, the system's going to get fixed. It's a matter of how long it takes to fix it, but I think we all would have benefited from seeing a very feisty and edgy Vanderbilt team in this postseason. And that gets me to my next point. It is bowl season, and TJ and I have a gift we're bringing to all the audience, and we're going to tell you about it on Thursday's lunchtime live show here. But tonight I get a chance to do this with Vegas Mack. So I showed you the bowl season schedule earlier. There's a lot of them that get going this weekend. So Mac and I decided to still remember that we enjoy bowl games and what they're about, and find our two favorite bowl games each from the bowl schedule of the teams not in the college football playoff. And hopefully these teams will be fully equipped or as close to that as they possibly can in today's day and age of what college football is. So I will start with you, Mac. Why don't you give me one of your two bowls that you absolutely will make sure you're watching in this Coca-Cola bowl season?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, in mine, I get started right off the bat this weekend. The Bucked Up LA Bowl. I
Watch
think
your
it's
mouth.
yeah, I know. I think it's a really good matchup. Boise State and Washington. Washington kind of was on that cusp. They had a couple of really good wins. We're starting to make a push for their conference championship. Boise, again, three-time winners of the Mountain West. This is a good matchup of two good teams out west. I like this one. I think this will be a fun. I think Washington wins this game. Gosh, I hope my wife didn't hear that. I think Washington wins this game. But when I was looking at it, I thought this would be a kind of a. If I had to go watch a game, I thought this would be a fun matchup to go see.
So I want to make sure we do this properly here because there's so many
Sure.
sponsors involved. By the way, sponsorship opportunities are available. MikeAranaShow@gmail.com. The Bucked Up LA Bowl, which is officially the Bucked Up LA Bowl hosted by Gronk
Oh,
that
okay.
you were just talking about there. Bucked
Yeah.
Up, for those of you wondering, is a sports nutrition / energy drink that I have never even heard of. And when we go into, all right, so that's your first one there. Of course, I page missed myself here. So why don't you give me your second one so I can figure out the date and time? I know which ones I'm talking about. I just lost them in the schedule of 7,000 bowl games here.
All right. So this one's kind of funny because a little thing happened as I was doing this one. I was typing in my notes. It's the ReliaQuest Bowl, which is Vandy in Iowa, and I was typing it in, and of course, your phone spell checks everything, and it changed it to the Delinquent Bowl. And I thought,
Those damn Hawkeye delinquents.
I was thinking, oh, that was kind of interesting, but I thought that was good. You have two teams here that have just we're talk about. I think it's kind of almost like the same team. It's two teams that played every single game, every single week. Everybody they played them really, really tough. And you knew if you saw Vandy or Iowa on your schedule, you had yourself a handful. And so these are two teams that I think to me almost kind of mirror each other. This is, in Iowa, we know they have their big setup. They just want to run. They use their tight ends. To me, I think this seemed like another one that was, if I had to go watch it, this would be a fun bowl to go see because it's just two tough, gritty teams that, I hope they would take that into that final game. And I think this could be a good matchup.
Very appropriately so. I just figured out where my first bowl is. It's a Friday night game, or it's a Friday morning game, 9 a.m. from Conway, South Carolina, Brooks Stadium, home of the Chanticleers. It is the Myrtle Beach Bowl. And you're going, nice. Man, you really are a sick. Yeah, I am. It's Kennesaw State in Western Michigan. This Kennesaw State team, I know TJ mentioned them a couple of times this year, barely scratching into Division I, and they go out and they win their conference, and they're going to a bowl game against a Western Michigan team that's pretty damn good at 9-4 too. And these are the games that I like the most during bowl season as it stands right now, because I got a pretty good idea that most of the good players for both of these teams are going to be playing in this game, right, assuming that they haven't already hit the portal to go somewhere else. I'm going to see both of these teams at close to full strength here. So I'm looking forward to that one. Plus, I love it degenerate-wise, because while we will have a show on that Friday the 19th, it'll be starting at the same time as the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl between Memphis and NC State. My other one that I kind of highlighted here, and I can't believe I forgot where it was again. It's the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Mm-hmm. The Pop-Tarts Bowl has become just a really cool thing in general.
Yes.
It's like the pseudo-national championship for teams that weren't good enough to play for a national championship. And this game has got a great matchup. It should have been Notre Dame and BYU. It is Georgia Tech and BYU. Georgia Tech with their offensive coordinator, Buster Faulkner, who is on his way to John Summerall's staff at Florida. But we've talked about both of these teams a lot. I love the quarterback matchup in this game between Bear Bachmeyer and Haynes King. I think it's going to be a fun game. It's in Orlando. It's the right time of the year, middle of the day, 2 days after Christmas. The Pop-Tarts Bowl is where it's at. And if you don't know, I can't help you. Just watch the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. We'll get into some of the rest of them. I'm interested to see what
some good
DJ's
games.
Favorite ones. Some of the names on the sponsors, though, crack me up. I mean, we get our basics, your Delinquent Bowl, the Valero Alamo Bowl, the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, where Arizona State will take on ACC champion Duke from El Paso, Texas, one of the cool college football venues.
I was in Tucson this weekend, and I saw it all in the newspaper. Don't forget, down in Tucson, the Snoop Dogg, the Arizona Bowl. Snoop is going to be there. It's what it said in the paper. Snoop is going to be there.
Yay. How about the Trust in Will Holiday Bowl? Speaking of Arizona, Arizona will take on ACC stalwart SMU from Snapdragon Stadium in San Diego. Holiday Bowl, rocking good time. You can't go wrong being in San Diego for the New Year's.
Say dating myself as I always do on this show, but remember when the Holiday Bowl was like the bowl? It was every year. Like it was these two teams. They always seemed like they had these two great offensive teams. This was always like a 63-57 kind of a game.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, the one year they did it at Petco, I went and saw the Holiday Bowl. I've been to 3 Holiday Bowls. The first one I saw was my favorite because, and this will rock you down memory lane, especially if Mama Mack's watching, but Ortiz Jenkins and Trung Candidate and Dennis Northcutt and the Wildcats took on the Kansas State Wildcats. I got blasted, absolutely hammered at Sayhouse. Don't remember much of the damn game, but it was a rocking good time. So we'll get into a little bit more of the bowl season stuff as we go through. Penn State, they get their guy, Matt Campbell. We'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. The NFL situation is getting a little bit of clarity. Still trying to figure out what the hell I watched last night, but we're getting some clarity here. We're getting some things, and reality is set in for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Wow.
Who now, and legit, we're at that point. Kansas City has to win out, and they need help from Indy and a couple of other teams there. So what we didn't think we were going to see, we're going to see. But my question is, after last night's game, and I said it in yesterday's video. Again, we advise you, when you see our videos on our social channels, watch the entire video. Because a lot of you would actually get winning picks from us, especially when it comes to college football. Now that our college football regular season is done, we all posted winning records on our Saturday segment. So big ol' pat on the back to us. Other than that, I've sucked Mondays and Thursdays in the NFL. But I asked the question last night, am I watching the 2023 Eagles and I'm just prepared for this because it's happening again and I've already seen this? Or are we watching the 2024 Eagles that are getting ready to make a Super Bowl run? I clearly got my answer last night. Mac, are we looking at a situation here? Probably not likely, but there is a possibility that both Philly and Kansas City could miss the postseason. Obviously, Philly's got a little bit of a cushion on Dallas, but Dallas isn't. They're still hanging around.
Yeah, like you said, I think what's going to help the Eagles, at least I think what's going to help the Eagles is their schedule. Their schedule is the Raiders, the Commanders twice, and the Bills. If the Eagles don't make the playoffs with those 4 games remaining, you're going to see. I stay away from Philly. That's all I'm going to say. Stay away from Philly because I would not be anywhere near that facility. Not that I would wish any harm on anybody, but that would be if that last game at home against the Commanders and they probably wouldn't be eliminated. But imagine that a must win and they lose to the Commanders. If I were Sirianni, I would just walk right out. Well, no, I wouldn't walk out. I would stay until Monday morning and walk out because that would be ugly. So I think Philly will get in based on the weakness of their schedule, but that is not a good football team. That is not a team that's going to repeat as Super Bowl champions.
Yeah, and going around the league this week, and ironically, we'll start with the team that is chasing Philly, and that's Dallas, who didn't do themselves any favors as they go down 44-30 on Thursday. Moves the Cowboys to 6-6-1, keeps the Lions in a good spot at 8-5 here. But just a sloppy game, top to bottom, from the Cowboys on Thursday. The 2 interceptions for Dak, they looked real disjointed. Obviously, what Jahmyr Gibbs is doing is ridiculous. Like the guys he's passed, like Randy Moss and Barry Sanders for most touchdowns before the age of 24. He ripped off 3 of them the other day. Mm-hmm. And a big win for the Lions. And I think we were all kind of looking at this game. Dallas definitely had the momentum. They were playing the better football. But kind of as I mentioned last week, like if there's ever a team that we should know better by now under Dan Campbell's leadership not to count out, it's the Lions. They're going to fight your ass until somebody says, hey, it's over. You got to go now.
This is going to get very, very interesting here these last couple of weeks. It just you look at the schedule. Not the schedule. You look at the standing. It's kind of funny. You see Detroit in the 8th spot. The Bears are in the 7th spot, but yet you have Tampa Bay. They got to be up there. They're in the 3rd spot. I don't think anybody but If you ask me right now, I would put my money on Carolina, which seems really, really shocking.
I told you guys a couple weeks ago they're dangerous.
I of all those teams, I think the Bears will be fine. I know TJ's probably a little bit happier this week, but I would definitely put a silver nickel on the Panthers to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be wrong there. I mean, right now the only thing keeping Carolina from being 4th and Tampa Bay being 9th is the conference or the winning percentage in common games. So the games that Tampa and Carolina have played the same opponents, but that thing's not done yet. In Carolina, they step up to the plate when they play good teams. For Detroit, now at 8-5, but they're 1-3 within their division and they're 5-4 in the conference. So despite that, and when you look at how you're talking about down the stretch and how things get fun, well, Detroit is at Los Angeles to take on the Rams this weekend. Then they host the Steelers. They're at the Vikings, and they finish the season at the Bears. So, not only do you have the intrigue of this could be Bears-Lions for the final playoff spot in the NFC, because let's call a spade right now. I think barring anything catastrophically horrific happening, that all 3 of the teams from the NFC West are going. San Francisco, Seattle, and the Rams. It's just a matter of which order they finish. Philadelphia's got the cushion on on Dallas there. Whoever's going to win the South is going to win the South. So what we're looking at here is you're literally looking at the Bears, the Lions, and the Packers, but the Packers have that 2-game leg up on the Lions and the game already in hand on the Bears. So this is literally going to come down to the Lions having to do some shit down the stretch here. Again, at Los Angeles versus the Steelers, at the Vikings, at the Bears. That's how they finished. So that win on Thursday for them was absolutely massive, and they looked a little bit more like the Detroit team that we're used to seeing. Now, can they continue it forward is the question, because that's kind of been their hiccup all year.
Yeah, and they've just been inconsistent. They haven't, and they just haven't been able to play both sides of the both offense and defense consistently. And yeah, I still, like you said, they were better offensively last week. We'll see if they continue that. That's kind of been, like I said, thus we say they've been inconsistent. They've looked like the Lions one week, and then the next week they look like the Jets. I mean, let's be honest. They that inconsistency has really hurt them. I still wonder a little bit about them offensively. I'm still not convinced yet.
Yeah, and Seattle went into Atlanta this weekend, beat the living hell out of the Falcons. A sluggish start to the game. They didn't cover my first half number. They outscored the Falcons 31-3 in the second half of that game. The game was tied at 6 going into halftime, and Seattle just opened it up in the second half. 3 turnovers for the Falcons, 1 for 13 on third down, 0 for 4 in the red zone, and you go, well, that's atrocious offense. No. I've tried to warn everybody. I've said it for the last 2 years. Mike Macdonald is building a monster up there. They've got Nick Emanwuri, who had a fantastic game, which I love to see because I have a bet on him to be the defensive rookie of the year. He had a blocked kick, he had a sack, and he had an interception in that game. Just one of multiple talented pieces on this defense, and Mike Macdonald continues to win games on the freaking road. 2 road losses in almost 2 full seasons now as the head coach of the Seahawks.
It's crazy how good that team actually is, and like you said, I don't think they've hit the tip of the iceberg of how good they're going to be. I still think I don't know that this is the year for the Seahawks, but darn, that is just a tough team. Just that you can just tell that they exude everything from their head coach. They just have that grit to them.
Yeah, and it's funny because, last year we talked about the NFC North and the Vikings and the Lions and the Packers and the success of those 3 collectively. Well, you've got San Francisco, Seattle, and the Rams in the West at 9-4, 10-3, and 10-3. Not only is this thing nowhere near done in the West, it's going to be fascinating theater down the stretch, because when you look at some of the variables in play here, the Rams 3-1 in the division, 5-3 in the conference. The Seahawks 2-2 in the division, 6-3 in the conference. The Niners 4-1, and they're 8-2 in the conference. And they come back out of their bye with Tennessee, and then they have the game at Indy. Then they have the game at home against Chicago and the home game against Seattle. There's a really good possibility here that if Denver or Detroit can knock off the Rams, and you don't need them both, just one of the two. Let's say the 49ers win out. Let's say the Seahawks win out. Let's say the Rams lose one of those games. There's a real possibility that week 18 in Santa Clara is Niners-Seahawks for the West title. And there is also still a scenario in play there that it would be not only for the West title, it could be for the number 1 overall seed.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of joke sometime about the way the schedule is and how teams just have some weird week to week things, but when it's all said and done, we look at this, and I was looking, like Tampa Bay has to play Carolina twice down the stretch. I mean, that's what it should be. You should have those divisional games at the end, and kudos to the NFL, because what they've done this year, whether they've done it or not, is we actually have races in just about every division. Which is not heard of. I mean, just about every division is up for grabs.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like the next game we're going to get into from this past weekend, Cincinnati and Buffalo. Cincinnati, little bit of a tougher road now with the loss this weekend, but Cincinnati played again in Buffalo in the elements and played great for most of the game. And then Superman tossed on his cape and rescued the Bills yet again. It's funny, we didn't do it, and we've done it every year, but we didn't do it this year. Usually at the halfway point, we kind of look at our preseason predictions and see if we want to sell a pick back that we were way wrong on and just reassess them and everything. And I don't have your guys' Super Bowl picks in front of me, but I'm pretty sure all of us, they're all still alive. I feel extremely still confident about my Super Bowl prediction from the beginning of the year, San Francisco and Buffalo. And it's for moments like I saw, as much as Bills fans don't enjoy watching the games that way and needing Superman to put his cape on, for the love of God, James Cook, hold on to the damn ball for me too, by the way. Like, seriously. But, like, I know Bills fans don't love it, but this team has that special something going on. And I think a lot of it is that it is the last season at the Ralph. I'm sure they wanted everything to go through the Ralph, in their final season in the old Ralph before the new Ralph. I don't care what the hell Highmark is involved with it. It's the Ralph. But it doesn't look like that's likely here. So, at this point, what's the motivation for Buffalo? Well, I think Buffalo is fully confident and capable of beating anybody, anywhere, anytime. I think there's some extreme motivation for Buffalo to really put some heat on the Patriots to try and get that number 1 or even the number 2 seed and then let it play out. I also think the other motivation there for Buffalo is, let's say they can't catch the Patriots. Let's make sure we're 5th and hope that some other chaotic situation happens above us and maybe we do sneak a home game, because I would hate to see in the final year of that stadium, Buffalo not get to host one more playoff game, especially in a year. Like, can you imagine if their last game they ever played in Buffalo at the old Ralph was the AFC title game that finally sent them back to the Super Bowl? There'd be people going, I know we need the parking space here, but this is now a historical landmark. Don't touch that building. Leave it alone, because we just got the monkey off of our back. I think this Buffalo team is kind of like Georgia to me a little bit, Mac. I think that's the best way I can put them together here is I think we're kind of sleeping on the Bills because they've had some significant issues, and we have questions about their playmakers, not named Kincaid, Cook, or Allen. I think we're sleeping on this Bills team, especially with the layout of the current AFC.
Okay. So I've got the brackets in front of me right here as of right now. I mean, I can play that scenario out. I could say that, the Chargers could beat Jacksonville. I could say Houston would win and beat the Patriots. I don't think that would be a shocker. I could see, without a doubt, Buffalo beating Pittsburgh, and I could see Buffalo then going in and beating Denver. And if Houston or even the Chargers, wouldn't matter. Buffalo would be seated better than them. They could get a home game in the AFC Championship game. I mean, there's a road there, and it's not outrageous.
Remember the Cardinals-Eagles, when the Cardinals ended up hosting the NFC title game. It was the same kind of weird-ass bullshit at the end of the year. So there's a path there.
It's not an outrageous path. I mean, to think that they could go into Pittsburgh and beat Pittsburgh, well, we know they can do that. Could they go into Denver and beat Denver? I mean, I really think they could. And I mean, except for, either, and I mean, let's be honest. I mean, even though the Patriots have played well, right now, I don't know. That actually would be a fun matchup. Houston at New England. Right? I mean, and then none of us believe in Jacksonville. So there you go. So there's a path there right now for them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But you're right. That would be a fun way to go out. I would like them to have one more playoff game. That place would be absolutely jacked.
Well, and I think this kind of highlights the NFL season perfectly right here. And maybe this is a good place to transition into Ticket Tuesday. We'll see. If you say right now, okay, Mike, I'm going to give you $100. I'm going to give you $200, $100 for each conference. Right now, make a bet on the exact matchup in the AFC Championship game and the NFC Championship game, knowing what you know. And when I look at the AFC, I am not exaggerating this. I think I've said the point perfectly clear plenty of times on the show. We don't say shit just to get clicks. I legitimately believe this when I'm looking at the AFC. If you made me make a bet right now, and I had to do it right now so I could get the full $100, I have to make the bet right in front of you. I would put Buffalo and Houston in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
There, that solves my home playoff game for Buffalo problem. Obviously, right. Buffalo would love it because Josh wouldn't have to play Houston at NRG Stadium, which has not been kind to him. And then in the NFC side, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I'm looking at it and I'm going, I could see an NFC West, NFC Championship game. Mm-hmm. I think we're looking at San Francisco and Green Bay, which is great if you're a 49er fan because I know that the fans own the Packers. So do the 49ers. So I think that would be interesting. The NFC, I think it's a lot harder to tell. I think in the AFC, when I look at the current set, and Houston would be the last team in, Indy would be the first team out. Buffalo and Houston, I think I could make a very serious, reasonable case with myself that that's the AFC title game if I had to pick it right now. I'm not sold on the Patriots. I'm not sold on the Broncos' ability to score points in a tough environment. Their defense will keep them in the games. I still have some issues with just what I've seen offensively out of Denver. Granted, they could probably win every playoff game they play 13-10, 10-7, 10-6. They could. I just wonder if somebody forces them to have to score points if they can keep up. That would be my thing. I think it's way harder in the NFC to try and. I think you could make a case for, and if we even kept Carolina, we went all the way down to 9 because that's how fluid the NFC is. Mm-hmm. I think you could make a case for every single one of those teams playing their best ball to win the Super Bowl. In the AFC, I can't do that.
No. Yeah, I mean, I need multiple coins to flip because that's kind of how I feel.
Wooden nickels, half dollars.
I mean, whatever we've got. I mean, yeah. And I think we said it. I think this is a year where it's so wide open. I mean, we really do need these next 4 weeks to kind of figure it out a little bit more. It's that wide open. I'm not quite, like I said, we've kind of joked about it. Who's this week's flavor? Because it's been changing every couple of weeks.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think, and we'll get into these games in our spotlight games tomorrow, but when you look at you take a peek into the schedule for this weekend, not only was last week kind of loaded up, we've got a Thursday night game with Atlanta and Tampa. With what we've seen out of Tampa recently, I can't just overlook Atlanta there in that situation. Then you've got Ravens, Bengals. I get it, the 6-7, 4-9, but it's still a part of a race where your team leading the race and the Steelers doesn't look like they're on solid ground either. So that's a big game. Chargers and Chiefs. We talked about the Chiefs situation. They have to win out and get help. You've got Bills, Patriots this weekend. And every game that I just mentioned right there is a Thursday game or a Sunday morning game. When you get to the Sunday afternoon part of the schedule, we've got Packers, Broncos, we've got Lions, Rams, we've got Panthers at the Saints. And I think the Panthers definitely are not going to sleep on the Saints after going into Tampa and doing them a favor. You've got Colts, Seahawks. Is Phillip Rivers going to be the starting quarterback? Welcome back, Grandpa. Here's the Seahawks defense in Seattle. Best of luck, you young whippersnapper. And then, of course, what would a week be if we didn't have the Cowboys back on prime time as they host the Vikings on Sunday night? Dolphins, Steelers Monday. Interesting game there, too, because this Miami team, since firing Mike Greer's brother Chris, has actually started to play good football here. Mm-hmm. That's a 7-6 game against a 6-7 game. Miami very much can keep themselves afloat, if you will.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they're really. I mean, again. We just talked about how the NFL has done themselves a favor. As I go down the list, there's one game on there, the Washington Giants game. That is that the only game that probably doesn't have some sort of playoff scenario involved in it? That's it. That's the only one.
Well, who's Cleveland playing this week?
Chicago.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So I mean, that's
Yeah,
really the only.
there really
eh,
isn't a bad spot, dude.
No, I mean every other game has at least one team that's alive for a playoff spot. That's the only game where you have two teams that are kind of out of it.
Well, and the other thing is too is when you progress this even forward, you go a week farther in the schedule. Then we have Thursday night football. The next week is Rams at Seahawks. Saturday night we have Bears and Packers along with the college football playoff quarterfinals. Then you go into Sunday's schedule, and Sunday that week not the greatest, but we do get Bucks Panthers, we get Jaguars Broncos, we have Steelers Lions, Patriots and Ravens, which actually just got flexed to Sunday Night Football,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
Monday that week is the Niners and the Colts. So, I mean, there's one thing that we can say unequivocally about the NFL, and their schedule makers do it right. Maybe you should take some notes, NBA, NHL, and Major League Baseball. Speaking of all those leagues and all the places you can be in attendance, it is a Tuesday night. That means it's Ticket Tuesday, where Mack takes you on his penny pinching ride so you can get some, well, I'm going to say sometimes some low level quality sports entertainment for a very cheap price. Take it away, Vegas Mac.
All right. Well, as you know, we can't completely forget about football. So let's just go there. Let's start with our NFL. It's a little pricey, but you can go see Carolina and New Orleans play. You're going to New Orleans, so I mean that's not half bad for just $13. That's not too bad. We can kind of maybe squeeze that into our budget. But here we go. We've got college basketball this weekend on Saturday. And hey, what? Listen, you want to be in a good spot? Some places are a little cold. Get down to Miami. Well, they'll take on the University UL Monroe. I think that's University of Louisiana and Monroe at Miami. $4 gets you in that game. I mean, you
$4.
cannot.
Good God.
You cannot. But hey, listen, that may not be your cup of tea. Maybe you like a little bit of nostalgia. Well, I've got nostalgia for you. All I need is $5 from you, and I can take you up to the Carrier Dome up in Syracuse. You can
No.
watch. I feel the same way, but I got
No.
family. I got family and friends up there. So Hofstra at the Dome for $5. If you want to go out to the West Coast, how about UC Davis and Oregon? $6 for that game. That's not so bad whatsoever. Maybe college basketball is not your thing. Maybe you want to go to a kind of an NBA game. Um,
Kind of an NBA game. This ought to be good.
for $6 whole dollars, I can get you a pretty good spot. Washington at Indiana.
Jesus. I thought you were gonna go to the New Orleans Pelicans, and I was gonna tell you no. They actually have discount codes where you can get free tickets to go to their games now.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's that bad. It's that bad.
Yeah, it is. The big winners this week in the NFL: Buffalo at New England, Green Bay at Denver. It's going to cost you $300 plus to go to those games.
Man, we got a hell of a week. Good thing we have more shows this week to get
Absolutely.
that handled. So tomorrow night, again, we'll go more into the college football chaos. We've got some solutions for you. We've got ways to fix it. Anybody that's watching, throw our names in the hat to be the rulers of college football. But we got your back. We'll talk
Absolutely.
about the elephant in the room, the teams that missed out, who we thought got jobbed the most. It's going to surprise you with a couple of those. And then we'll pick some winners and final fours, if you will, liquid locks tomorrow. NFL spotlight games, as Mac and I were just alluding to. We're loaded up, man. When the calendar starts to give us Saturday NFL games, we are loaded up. Good college basketball. Get your ass on over to your TV as soon as we are done here, which is going to be in just a matter of a couple of moments. Florida and UConn, 10:53 left in the first half from the Garden. And Florida has an early lead on the fifth-ranked Huskies, 17-11. BYU ended up pulling that game off. Did not go to overtime. Wow, it didn't. They ended up hitting a three at the buzzer. Largest second-half deficit ever for BYU to counter. AJ DeBansta, 28 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists. If you have not watched this kid play, I am telling you, you are missing out. Do it now. So then he's appointment television. in March. A lot of times we've talked about this a lot. We've talked about it a lot this year with Arch Manning, Bryce Underwood. You don't want to put the kudos on some of these freshman athletes, kids, really. This kid's the real freaking deal. Like
Good
Cooper
player.
Flag got all the hype last year and should have. He's this year's Cooper Flag. He is a hell of a lot of fun to watch. Any final words from you on this Tuesday?
Man, oh man. I just, you know what? This is a fun time of year. I will tell you, I can't wait till T gets tomorrow because I got some real feelings about the Bulls. I can't wait to share those. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I know T's going to have a couple of gems for us in his favorite bowl games, which reminds me I need to text him and remind him to make sure he has some bowl games. Also, man, maybe we'll let the cat out of the bag tomorrow. But on Thursday, T and I have something special for bowl season.
All
I
right.
know we all love it. I'm interested to get his take on it because we haven't talked about it. And obviously, both you and T have stated your case about how this year's been kind of tainted when it comes to college football for you guys, and I understand your positions on it. I absolutely do, and I think we have to remember we're going to get a solution. It's never going to happen fast enough for us. And next year, even if they were to expand it next year, Notre Dame would be in if you haven't heard about that clause. But even if they were to expand it next year, Team 17, Teams 18, Teams 19, and Teams 20 will all have a gripe. And if we go to 24, 25, 26, 27 are going to. I don't think any of us want a perfect system here. We just want to understand what the hell the system is, and that's the problem. So, with that being said, we'll get T's thoughts on all that stuff tomorrow. We'll puck around and find out liquid locks, NFL spotlights, and who knows what we might pull out of our non-sleeves or classic NHL hockey sweater sleeves right there. So for everybody behind the scenes, for T, for Mack, and Mike, you know the drill. We'll talk with you tomorrow.